What's happening, everybody? This is Crush It Crypto, where we show you how we're crushing it in crypto so that you can crush it as well. And I'm your host, Colin Andrews. And today we have a very special guest with us on the show. One of the top 50, actually one of the top 30 tokens in crypto as of right now, Zilliqa, and we have the head honcho, the CEO, Mr. Zinsu Dong. And Zinsu, it's great to have you on here. You've done some really impressive things with your token for the length of the time that you've been out, and what you've been able to do. And I just I've been watching some of your other videos that you've done in interviews, and it really looks like that you guys have a really interesting concept. You guys have been on my radar for a while. I just wanted to, first say thanks for coming on to the show and spending a few minutes with us.
Thank you, Colin. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So, and for everybody that's watching, if you've seen any of my other interviews with other tokens before, you'll hear me, you know that I have shared this before, and which is, it's just absolutely vital for any investor to not just understand the technology behind a token and kind of what their goals, what their milestones are, but to also understand who the people are that are executing on those milestones, the people that are actually getting the work done. Because frankly, anyone can put together, a fancy looking website. They can do some marketing. They can, have somebody write a cool white paper. But when it comes down to it, it really comes down to the people who are in place that can get the job done. And so that's why it's something that I've been really focused on, finding the people behind the projects. And so that's why we're doing these type of interviews, is to really understand the person and the people behind the project. So, obviously having the CEO of this token, of Zilliqa, and we'll be able to understand more about what it is that they're all about and what they're doing. So let's start off with it on kind of a high level. Can you kind of describe what is Zilliqa? What was the reason for you guys deciding to create this token, and just kind of give us a kind of a high level view for somebody that is just, let's pretend that they're brand new to crypto in an easy to understand way. Can you kind of share a little bit more about that?
Of course. So, and I completely agree with you. It's actually quite crucial to understand who are the sort of minds behind each project. So for us, I think we all started with a research paper in the university here in Singapore. It's National University of Singapore. So in 2015, 2016, so Pradeep Saxena, a professor, and his students and collaborators wrote a research paper. It's all about how do we make public blockchains more scalable by a technology called sharding. So at that time, sharding just wasn't a very new term, but then sharding was mainly used in the database community. Then that research paper was really about how do we apply some idea of sharding into the blockchain space. Because if you look at blockchain, they have their specific requirements, their specific protocols. So that paper was published. And then, I started to work with a company co-founded by that Professor Pradeep. We started to work on commercializing that sharding idea into private blockchains, just to make blockchains run much faster in terms of processing transactions. But then along the time, we realized, the public blockchains are getting more and more congested when more and more people will start to use them. And that's really pushing us to really think about, okay, we have the technology, we have sort of, verified the ideas in commercial trials, in private blockchain deployments, but are we going to just stay there, or we should really make this technology one step further to implement a public blockchain using sharding and really make a very scalable public blockchain. So that's sort of the idea and how everything about the Zilliqa story started. And in the beginning, we were just, thinking about it. Yeah, go ahead.
And I was going to ask you too, just, because a lot of people that are on here, they haven't been into crypto for a long time. So, the term sharding, can you kind of explain what that is to somebody that doesn't understand what that means?
Okay, so sharding may mean different things to different people, but at the very high level, what that means in blockchain usually is about you divide the computers, basically called nodes in the blockchain network, into different groups. So now let's say you have many transactions to be processed, and some of them will get into the next block. What sharding does is to say divide this list of transactions pending processing into such different groups. And each group will be working on a different subsets of such transactions, make their decisions, whether the transactions are valid or not valid. And then the results from each of the groups will be eventually aggregated into something like a final block. That is the block, the next block. So this is the high-level idea, and people differ in different ways. How do we divide? How do we process? How do we make things faster? How do we store information? But at the higher level, it's about dividing and conquering.
Got it. Okay. And you guys just recently launched your public testnet. Can you kind of talk about a little bit more about what that entailed and kind of what that means for where Zilliqa is right now as far as overall development?
Of course. This is the second version of our testnet. If we look back at the end of March this year, we released the first version of our testnet. So at that time, it was quite important. It's a very important milestone to us and to maybe everyone in the space, because that was sort of the first working implementation of sharding in the blockchain. So now 3 months have passed. What you have released by the last weekend was a new version. Number one, it has a lot of improvements in terms of the testnet and the sharding and many other sort of ways to improve on how information can be propagated across the network. That's more about stability, efficiency, or things like that. But another very interesting aspect that was released together with this testnet is our smart contract language called Zilliqa. So I think that's sort of another important factor besides just scalability in terms of adoption of blockchain technology. Because if you look at today's public blockchains, one thing is maybe it's not fast enough. When too many people, too many transactions are competing for limited bandwidth of, let's say, 10 to 15 transactions a second. But then on the other hand, sometimes maybe people will be stopped by seeing certain security vulnerabilities or bugs in the smart contract layer. For example, the DAO hack or the parity wallet issues. So we have a new smart contract language that is, number one, by design much more secure in terms of structure. And number two, it's very formal, so it allows formal verification of certain security properties and correctness. So in that, I think, it'll give people, especially serious business applications, much more confidence in migrating their applications codified onto the blockchain. So that's released already with our second version of the testnet. People can now already try 5 sample Zilliqa smart contracts with our testnet. So this is basically the status quo of our deployment. And I think there's still a lot of work to do. So for example, how do we run this Zilliqa smart contract language, not just securely, but also very efficiently with our sharded blockchain? So that's something we are still actively working on. I think we are going to see many more exciting news ahead of our milestones.
Got it. Great. And so would you say that one of the main things that Zilliqa is really working to do that other tokens aren't, or that you're really kind of trying to have yourself, let's just say, kind of stand out from the rest? Would it be the high throughput? Would it be the, what would you say that really is your guys' special sauce, so to say?
I would say we have 2 quite unique offerings. Number one is this high throughput, or we call it scalability. Scalability of public blockchains actually goes beyond just high throughput, because what that essentially means is, number one, you have throughput. Number two is, once your network grows larger and larger in terms of number of nodes in your network, you can actually have higher and higher throughput. So that is even harder to achieve than just high throughput per se. And more importantly, we are achieving such high scalability without compromising much on decentralization and security. That means once we have thousands of nodes in the network, these nodes are still all involved in reaching the consensus. This is unlike some other proposals where you sort of delegate your decision making to a smaller number of nodes. Because in us, many of us are from cybersecurity background. We believe strongly in terms of security and decentralization. And decentralization has many benefits. One of them is that it's going to be much more resilient against failures and attacks. So that's our first offering, scalability with decentralization. The second offering is what I just mentioned. It's really about a very secure smart contract language. It's going to revolutionize the whole space when people are trying to codify their business logic into such things, smart contracts. Because smart contracts historically are very expressive. They are very rich in terms of functionality. So that means it's easier for programmers to express their ideas into such programs. But on the other hand, they are also prone to different levels of errors and vulnerabilities. So that's something we are going to change fundamentally.
Excellent. And as far as like with the Zilliqa nodes, how do you guys reach consensus? Is it proof of work? Is it proof of stake? What can you kind of talk about, what it is that you're using with Zilliqa?
So it's based on something called practical Byzantine fault tolerance, PBFT. PBFT is a very nice and elegant protocol, I would say. It has the benefit of immediate finality. That means, once you reach a consensus with PBFT, that's it. That's final. You don't have to wait for a few confirmations to get, some confidence. That's not the case with the PBFT. But PBFT doesn't scale very well when you have bigger and bigger networks. So that's something we have to improve on when we adopt this PBFT. So that's why we bring other technologies such as, collective signing or COSI. So these are sort of, at the high level, what we do with our consensus protocol.
Got it. And as far as I read about a final block, can you talk about what exactly is a final block, and how do the different shards come together to reach consensus? A lot of this is just I know for your background and being more on the technical side, it might kind of come across as easy for you. Is there a way that you can kind of explain it to let's just say a Homer Simpson on the technical side?
Let me try to explain it in slightly more layman terms. So let's say we have a room, 100 people, and we have, 10 questions to ask them to solve. They not only need to solve these problems, they have to solve these problems in a consistent manner. That means, for each of the problems, they have to have one answer, basically, one same answer among most of them. So what traditional Nakamoto-based blockchains such as Bitcoin and Ethereum would do is to say, okay, I'll just send all these 10 problems to each of the 100 people, and then there's some communication. Of course, somehow, let's say, they talk to each other, and then they reach a consensus among the 10 answers to the 10 problems. So this is very good, because if you think about it, if some people have some problems, let's say they got sick, or let's say they even leave the room, that's fine, because there are so many other redundant people working on the same problems. But on the other hand, of course, let's say if this is not just about 100 people in the room, if we have 10,000 people in the room, that's going to be difficult because everyone has to solve every problem. It's not going to scale. So what Sharding does is to say we can divide these 100 people into 10 smaller groups, and we have 10 problems, right? So we send one different problem to each of the groups. And then each group will just solve that one problem. And then each group will have an answer for that. Other groups will basically just to, take whatever other groups are saying for the rest of the problems. And then that's why we have two types of blocks. One is something called micro block. So that is about the consensus reached within, each of the smaller groups. And then these 10 micro blocks from the 10 groups respectively will be aggregated into one block. So that is a final block. So the final block contains the answers for the 10 problems, except that the 10 answers are actually from 10 different groups. So that's sort of the high level idea of, dividing and conquering, sharding, including, micro and final blocks.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. And as far as the dApps, when do you see dApps coming to Zilliqa?
I definitely, like everyone else, I hope to see dApps coming as soon as possible. And there are some interesting teams and projects have announced that they have the interest in building their dApps on Zilliqa. And on the other hand, we also released our $5 million USD sort of ecosystem grant to encourage people to think about, interesting apps they can build on Zilliqa. Technically speaking, from this month, people can start writing programs in Zilla, which is our smart contract language. So that's really, technically speaking, that's the time when people can start doing something like that. Just now I got messages from some of our community developers. They said, we are thinking about doing some interesting games on Zilla. We'll get started very soon.
Got it. Okay. Do you know any projects specifically that are being done, or any type of use cases that are happening right now, or is it still kind of too early?
So we have some use cases sort of as work in progress. So one is this digital advertising initiative in collaboration
Sorry, what was
with.
It called? I didn't understand that. What kind of advertising?
Digital advertising.
Digital, got it.
Right. So it's about how do you do programmatic, for example. So that's one use case we are working on. We think that using a fast and secure blockchain like Zilliqa, we can really provide a platform, a much more sort of distributed and transparent platform for different players in digital advertising space to come on board. And let's say how we can work together in trying to align everybody's interest, but then at the same time, with the goal of improving the efficiency of the whole digital advertising space, because the whole space now is plagued with fraud or inefficiency or middlemen or walled gardens or things like that. So there are other use cases. For example, there's another use case on how do you use blockchain to scale the business of, let's say, a video streaming company. They have many videos, they have millions of users, they already have a revenue. But then let's say they want to scale to different countries, and whether they can leverage something like blockchain or even crypto tokens to better scale their business, and whether they can use blockchain technology to crowdfund certain new production of films or videos. So that's another use case. And there are some other use cases that we are in discussion with. For example, there's an insurtech company. We're thinking of using blockchain to revolutionize the whole insurance space, where people can get more flexible choices of their wish.
That's huge. I've been living in Colombia for the last couple of years, and my insurance is excellent here, but especially when you compare it back to the US, the United States just has some of the highest insurance that there is. So that's definitely an area that is ripe for disruption. So that's great to hear that there's kind of really serious type of use cases that are being developed, or at least being thought of and in the process of being developed. So very exciting. Right, excellent. Right. Wonderful. So let's talk about, where you see Zilliqa going from here. What's kind of the next step on the roadmap, for somebody that's looking at this, they're searching online, they're watching your videos, what's something that for somebody to take action and invest with you?
I think, the next big thing, of course, is the launch of the mainnet, because that's what, everybody is asking me about almost every other day. I think we are on track with our development schedule, but on the other hand, we are also very mindful of potential risks associated with the mainnet. So that's why we are very cautious. We are arranging, for example, security auditing. We are thinking through the whole process of token swap or things like that. We want to make sure that we will have a proper thing in place when we actually launch our mainnet. And then the second thing is, of course, driving adoption. We want to do that from two aspects. One is that we want to build really good tool chains for developers and for users to start using Zilliqa, because you don't want to use a bare bone, blockchain without much support with tools. And the second thing is, of course, to looking for good teams, good projects to build new sorts of dApps on Zilliqa to demonstrate the high throughput and high security capabilities we have. So these are really the two things people can look forward to.
Okay, excellent. As far as just on generally speaking, for people that are just getting into the space, new investors, can you kind of give maybe a couple tips that somebody that's just getting into crypto wants to be successful, they're kind of dipping their toes in right now. Can you give a couple kind of tips for people that are watching right now online, just some ideas as kind of what you're what kind of thoughts that you have for being somebody that's been in the space for a while.
You know, to be very honest, I think it's very hard to really distinguish projects from projects. To a certain extent, that's because many of the projects are at very early stage. Some projects only have a white paper, and how easy it is just to tell whether this is a very promising project or not from a few pages of white paper. So that's generally hard. I think we can look at whether the technology is really innovative. That's number one. But more importantly is also by interacting with the team members, for example, by looking at how they are sharing their ideas. Do you think this is a team? This is the team that's going to really implement that innovative idea? So having a new idea sometimes is not the most difficult thing, but really having a proper team in place to have concrete ideas, technology, and steps to implement these ideas. Sometimes that's a real challenge. And I think that will make a big difference in the time to come, because if we only have ideas but cannot deliver, eventually people will have more and more questions on blockchain or cryptocurrency in general. So that's why sometimes I feel really burdened to keep our promises at Zilliqa, for example, to keep delivering. At least we will become one of the projects that people say, okay, so these guys said they are going to do it. Although this is very hard, and although there are a lot of uncertainties, but these guys are trying their best to deliver. And that's going to make a big change. For new people who are entering this space, I think these kind of things maybe are something they can try to look for. Otherwise they may be buried into all these jargons.
No, great tips. And when it comes to other, tokens in crypto, are you kind of like all in on Zilliqa? Is that kind of the culture, or are you investing in other projects as well? And are there other tokens that, that because you're in the community and really involved, that you really like, or, whether it's blue chips, which I call, the top 20 tokens, any other projects that you support or that you're an investor in that you'd like to share?
In general, I just don't have too much time in keeping up with the new projects. But sometimes friends come to me, and sometimes I just support them. But that's more from supporting friends perspective. It's less about investing. So I don't really look for return in that case. I just think, oh yeah, it's a good thing. I think it's a good initiative. I'll support, because if you think about it, we are just all starting in this community. I think it's still very early for us to say which one will really succeed. I think we should just support each other's good initiative. So in that sense, I really don't have much to share, like what are the other good projects people should invest on.
Got it. So you're really just you got the blinders on as far as just really focusing on Zilliqa and trying to dilute yourself with other tokens is what you're saying. Right. Okay. Got it. And so any kind of last type of thoughts that you'd like to share with, the folks that are watching that, they're doing some research on Zilliqa, any type of, final things that you'd like to offer to these people that are checking it out, as well as our community?
Yeah, I think, we are really sharing this 5 million USD grant with everyone in the community. If you have any idea whether it's listed in our recommended projects or it's not listed, but you think it's cool, feel free to reach out to us. We have a Git channel dedicated to that. And if you have a good idea, but you don't have, team members who you think you can work with, that's still fine. Go into the channel and share ideas. I think other people will jump in.
Excellent. Great thoughts. Wonderful. Zinsu, really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing all your progress in the future. And for everyone that's watching this, you guys can, really see, this is a guy that, he's putting in the time, he's putting in the work. What time is it right there? What time is it in Singapore right now?
It's 10:30, about 10:30.
10:30. Yeah. So, doing interviews at 10:30 at night. It's just, very, very much appreciated. And, it can tell, for me personally, when, people aren't willing, they have these tokens, but they're, they have their, anonymous names that, that they put on their white paper, or that they put on their website, or that you don't see any interviews, and they're just kind of hiding behind a computer, so to say. It kind of makes me wonder, like, why should someone invest in a token or a coin when the founders or the people behind it aren't willing to share the project in a, and being able to communicate it effectively. So, very much appreciated for you doing that and really, getting, what the spirit of the whole, the token and what your guys' goals and mission is. It's really very much appreciated, from me and I can tell from a lot of other people in the community that, you doing these type of things and getting out there and, going to conferences and those type of things and, shaking hands. Whereas, you got to get the work done and you obviously got to focus on the milestones, but getting out and really sharing what it is that your mission is and your goals is really important to this community. So I wanted to say thank you for that very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Colin, for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you had a very good and an interesting conversation that you guys saw with us. And we'll make sure to share this with all of our groups, Zinsu, and really just get the word out about what you guys are doing. And hopefully, the people that understand and share your vision will also get behind you. And like you said, any type of good ideas that you're all open for hearing how people can use, what it is that you guys are doing and grow it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, folks, as you guys see, we bring the top of the top here on Crushing Crypto, and we will continue to do so. So we'll see you on the next one. Talk to you later. Throw up the peace sign, Sinsu. Let's see that peace sign.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, talk to you guys later. Adios.